In the HackerRank problem min-max sum, we're given 5 possible integers. We're going to find the minimum and maximum values that can be calculated by summing exactly 4 of those 5 integers. We're going to have a minimum and a maximum value. The minimum value is going to be comprised of all of the lowest values being added together, and the maximum is the same, but with all of our higher values being added together. So you can read through the rest of the instructions. We have our input, output formats, we have some examples and explanations as well. And then we can go down here to our class. Now our class result is going to be where our method lies. Class solution is just going to be testing it. We don't have to worry about that. We're going to be coding inside of here. So we have a public static void min max sum, and we are taking a list of integers as our parameter. It's called ARR. Now inside this list, it says that it's 5, so if we would like to, we could run a for loop for a specific number of times, or we can just use the size of this right here. I'm going to use the actual size of this, that way it can be variable in case something bigger or smaller is passed in. Now there is something to note. It says the output can be greater than a 32-bit integer. So since it can be greater than a 32-bit integer, it's greater than an integer, we're going to want to use a long to store some of our data. Inside of our method, I'm going to have 3 variables. I'm going to have sum, I'm going to have min, and I'm going to have max. So when I'm done and I'm about to print this out, I'm going to take the sum and I'm going to subtract the maximum from it to get the minimum value. And then I'm going to do the same, but also sum minus minimum for our maximum value. So for our sum, again, since it has to be stored in the it's greater than 32-bit integer, means we have to use a long. So we're going to do long sum, and we're going to set it equal to 0. Now we're going to assume that this array does have elements inside of it when it's passed in. And so what I'm going to do is int min, and I'm going to set it equal to arr.get0. So we get the very first element in this array, and then int max, we can just set it to min. We're going to set it to be the same exact thing. Now we are going to want to examine all of our elements. So let's do a for each loop. We'll do int a, and we'll run this as long as we are in our ARR. Now in this for each loop, I'm first going to want to add into our sum, because we want to add every element inside of it, and then deal with the subtraction of our min and max later. So sum plus equals, and we're going to do ARR dot, we would do, well, if we were doing a normal for loop, we would do get at the specific index. But for here, we're just going to do a, because this right here is going to get the integer at the index that we're currently looking at. Every single time this for loop runs, that's how for each loop runs. So sum plus equals, and then a inside of here. We are going to, we could do a math.min and a math.max value, or we can do an if statement. I'll just do an if statement here, that way we don't need to call the math class. So we'll say if our minimum value is greater than our current a value, then we're just going to set min to a. And if, we're not going to do else if, we have to do if because we also have to check this as well. If our max is less than a, that means our max is smaller than the current thing we're looking at, max is going to be equal to a as well. And that should be it inside of this for loop right here. Now all we're going to have to do is print out. So we'll do a system.out.print line. So inside of here, we want the minimum value. So we're going to do the sum minus our max value. And in doing this, we are essentially taking the largest number and ripping out the biggest part of it. So that should give us our minimum. And we're going to do the same thing after we add a space in between this. We'll have our sum minus our minimum value, and that should take out the very lowest thing and give us our maximum value. Let's put a semicolon here. Again, this is what's going to be testing it. So let's submit our code. Oh, we still have a compilation error. Let me see if we open our editor. We have sum minus, oh, that's actually good right here. So this sum minus max is okay because this math is before any appending. Once you append inside of a print statement, right after we have a string inside of it, it's going to kind of think that the rest of this is a string. And since it's not in quotation marks, it's going to throw a compiler error. So if you have actual math that you need to do, you need to surround this in parentheses. This one is okay because it's in front, and you'll see that when we resubmit it. But if you wanted to, you could put this in parentheses as well just to be safe. And so that was just our fix right here. Let's submit our code again. The only change that we made right here is running, and it passes all of our cases. So that is how I would look at going about solving this problem with this code.